Welcome, everyone. I am Pam Thompson, Manager of Adult Education with the Arnold Arboretum, and I'm pleased to be hosting this virtual tree mob storm damage update. For those of you who are not in New England, let me set the stage. Several weeks ago, on October 7th, arcs or bow echoes of high winds and thunderstorms sped across the northeastern US. Wind gusts, low humidity, and cooler temperatures combined to create a hybrid storm event. Afterwards, it was determined to be a derecho that rampaged across New York, western Massachusetts, and eastward into southern New England. While some areas sustained very little damage, the Arnold Arboretum experienced one of its worst storms in recent decades. That I have learned, though I'm not there on site, I've learned that we had a subsequent snow event as well as another 3 days of high winds. So the poor arborists and crew have had their share of cleanup to do. So I'm going to welcome Rachel Brinkman, Assistant Manager of Horticulture, and John DelRosso, Head Arborist. They will speak about the storm, discuss the cleanup process and strategies, and address the impact of such a storm on our long-lived collection of research specimens. Welcome, you two. Take it away,
Thank you,
John.
Pam. All righty. Thank you. Hello and welcome, everyone. Thank you for your interest and support in the Arnold Arboretum. It's been a difficult year here, to say the least. Derecho, or call it what you may, it was a mess. I have been here employed at the Arboretum for the last 25 years, and I can honestly say that these last series of storm events, are easily in the top 5 of what I've seen, to damage to the plant collections here in the Arboretum in the last 25 years. But let me go back a few months and start by saying that the drought that we experienced this year was defined by the USDA as severe. 4 months of below average rainfall from June through September put us at 9 inches below normal. And the damage that the plants in the Arboretum incurred as a result of Mother Nature started long before the rash of recent wind and snowstorms. Due to a lack of moisture in the soil, the plants had been subjected to many different types of stress that affected plant health. Some examples are breakdown of photosynthetic mechanisms, a loss of vigor and decline in health, desiccation of leaves, shutdown of plant stomates, drying and death of feeder roots, which further limit the plant's ability to absorb water and nutrients, loss of buds and branches, otherwise known as dieback, loss of defense mechanisms that help to fight off infectious diseases and attacks from certain insects, and of major importance, loss of turgor pressure, which caused the plants to wilt and lose their elasticity, causing them to become brittle. Fortunately, a few years ago, we had a large donation made to the Arboretum, and we were able to expand our reaches of irrigation. However, as many of you know, there is still a large percentage of the Arboretum that is not irrigated. The plants will only acquire moisture if we receive precipitation or if they're watered manually. And as you can imagine, that's a task that requires a great deal of labor. With a combination of stressed plants and severe weather, a recipe for disaster was written. As Pam said, the Arboretum was struck by a series of windstorms in early October. This came at a time when many of the plants were laden with fruit. And most recently, the snowstorm of October 30th, which brought officially 3 inches of heavy wet snow in Boston. I say officially because I honestly feel like Jamaica Plain got a bit more than they did in Boston. To me, it seemed like it was closer to 4 or 5 inches of heavy wet snow. And this came at a time when, before the plants had an opportunity to shed their leaves. So there was a large amount of surface area that the snow collected on, the leaves, the branches and whatnot, and it just weighted the branches down beyond their breaking point. Many of the Arboretum's accession plants sustained damage. There were several plants that were a total loss, and many more received damage that was quite substantial. Here at the Arboretum, when we expect there to be some type of severe weather event, the first mode of action is preparing ourselves for this. We'll sharpen many of the chainsaws, we'll tune them up, we'll top off the fuel for all of our equipment, make excess fuel for the jugs. We can bring it out with us, the fuel mix. We ready the aerial lift and chipper and any other equipment that might be needed for the cleanup process. Personnel is also surveyed. Oftentimes it seems that many of these storms seem to occur during the weekends or times when overtime may be needed. So the team is pooled to see just who may be available. And after the storm, as soon as it is safe to do so, we proceed to do a sweep of the Arboretum. Special consideration is given to the roads and pathways, and what we are looking for is any damage that may have now created potentially hazardous conditions. If it seems like a plant has been lost to the storm, the curation department is made aware so that if necessary, repropagation efforts can be made to preserve its lineage. Oftentimes cuttings and or seed may be collected from the plant to provide propagule material. These requests to the curation department and other notable requests for arboricultural attention are made through an app that was developed here at the Arboretum by Arboretum staff. This app helps us to keep track of what plants need immediate attention. Rachel Brinkman, our Assistant Manager of Horticulture, is now going to demonstrate how we negotiate our way through an entry onto the app known as Arb Manager.
Thanks, John. Hopefully everyone can hear me okay. So I'm Rachel Brinkman, Assistant Manager of Horticulture here at the Arnold Arboretum. And when a storm happens, John and I are a close team, surveying the grounds and trying to really document and prioritize all the damage that happens. So before I kind of show you how we do a green card or a recording of a damaged tree, I just want to show you some of the entries from the past storms we've had in October. And this is a new app that we've developed here at the Arnold Arboretum, and it has been an amazing tool to really help us document and prioritize and just really share information about storm damage amongst our team. So here's this is a list of all the plants storm damage that we've had in the month of October. And so you can see it's a hefty list. I think it's high 60s. And this is everything from a tree has fallen over to a limb is broken and there's a hanger up in the canopy that the arborists need to go and attend to for safety. Because even a small branch in the canopy over a path can be hazardous to the public walking below it. So that, and it's still going. There's all the plants. So I'll show you an example of one. So here, this red, and there's different colors. So red is means urgent or high priority, and so when we submit this request, it sends an email to everyone we're submitting it to alert them that this needs attention immediately, and to review this plant. So this is a Caria, and this was in our Caria collection. So in the Hickory collection up by Center Street in the Arboretum. And it is in poor condition because this poor plant fell over. So you say the condition is poor. The problem is storm damage. It affected the whole plant, complete structural failure, the plant uprooted, and arborist assistance is needed. And because this plant is uprooted, you're going to have to remove it. So let's see. So the person who found this plant or first got the report to this plant, Andrew Gopinski, our manager of horticulture, and he would send it to me or Michael, our curator. Michael would then review the plant, see if we need to reprop it. If we need to reprop it, our plant production staff is notified. Plant production staff will go out, take cuttings of it, and then once they've gotten the material that they need, we would then proceed with the cleanup of this or the removal of this plant. Another great thing about this app is you can see the willow behind John earlier. So is we can share photos through it also. So here's a photo of this willow that you might have saw behind John as he was speaking. So that one actually, this damage occurred in 2 different storms in October. The first storm, this left side fell down, and we're like, maybe we should, rejuvenate this. But then the following storm that happened a couple of weeks later, the other half fell down. So it was kind of like, I guess that plant's a total loss. So we sent it to the curator, Michael Dosman, who reviewed the plant. He approved the removal of the plant. And then because this one actually happened in a wetland, we just made it safe, but left the material there in place in the wetland. And real quick, let me show you a map. So this is the Arboretum. And we can add all the existing requests. So this is more than just storm damage. This is all of the open, all those red squares or diamonds are maintenance requests using this Art Manager app. So there is a lot of work to be done. So this is not just, doesn't record the sort of the daily, normal, everyday maintenance. This is just if something needs attention, we can share it and kind of have a to-do list for the horticulturists. This is one of our storm damaged plants right there. And then we can look at the photo. So storm damage can really cover the gauntlet to complete failure or something like this, which is just a lot clean up this break, and then the plant can go on its happy, merry way. Okay, John, I'm going to turn it back to you.
All right, thank you, Rachel. So yeah, folks, Art Manager, this new app, some of the really nice features about it are, as Rachel said, we are able to now attach photographs to our reports, our requests when we make note of a plant, whether it's storm damage, or maybe the plant just needs a label, maybe it needs a root collar excavation. No matter what, the option to attach a photograph for the request is really great. In the past, when we had just the hard copies of the green cards, we were limited to just writing down a description. And as Rachel said, it also has a map feature. So when we take our phones out to the collections, we can just punch in one of these requests, bring up the accession number, punch it into a search under the map link, and it will show us exactly where this plant is. A little bit easier than busting out the old map books, finding the page, finding the quadrant, and therefore then finding the plant itself. So it's a process that eventually becomes quite smooth. We're still getting used to it, but it's becoming quite a help here at the Arboretum. Okay, so thank you, Rachel. Now getting back to responding to the storms here. When we are responding to damaged trees, special attention is given to how we begin our approach. Very often storm damage presents very tricky and oftentimes dangerous conditions that require special consideration, care, and expertise in order to extract and repair the broken parts of a tree. As you can imagine, as you see in this picture here, there's a lot going on there, okay? There's a lot of weight that's being distributed on the branches that are still supporting the part that is broken away from the tree. The weight of the branches itself, the snow that's on top of it, creates some very potentially hazardous conditions. There are a lot of pressure or tension points on that wood that we need to be aware of as we disassemble all of those branches. Worst case scenario, we might just pinch our bar with our power saw and get it stuck. I'm sorry, did I say worst case scenario? Best case scenario. Worst case scenario might be as we're making a cut and trying to disassemble that tree, there could be a lot of tension released, causing a limb to spring back and perhaps fracturing a limb, a jaw, or something even worse. So you can see, one never knows what to expect when we're dealing with storm damage. There's always a lot of surprises. We need to take our time, plan our approach, and work carefully and methodically. Unfortunately, all too often one hears about someone who was hurt trying to clean up after storm, and usually it's because they didn't take time to consider the potential risk involved, or that they were way in over the head. This is work that is best handled by professional arborists. Sometimes the damage that we expect to find is predictable. Certain trees have a history of failing. Oftentimes it's species related, excuse me. Softwood brittle trees such as pine, ash, basswood, and willow, such as the one behind me. What you're looking at right now, again, some methods that are used in extracting large breaks or removing the tree itself that obviously can require a lot of skill. The picture on your left, what you see wrapped around the tree with the yellow and orange line going up the trunk of the tree, called porter wraps, a portable device which the line is wrapped around to create friction. So when the branches up in the tree are cut free, we use the friction to slowly and carefully lower them to the ground so as not to create any more damage to plant material or whatever else might be below the pieces that we're removing. If you look carefully at the picture on the right, that is a large catalpa tree that was struck by lightning. I believe it was last year, early May perhaps. And you can see the large wound from the lightning strike that just runs vertically right down the main stem of the tree, fracturing the wood apart and created a very hazardous condition as we were dismantling that tree. And what we needed to do was actually wrap that tree with ratcheting straps. You can see there's a blue one, and further up into the tree near the top of the screen, there's a yellow one, which is literally holding that tree together as we take the other pieces above it apart, so that as not to lose the support of the tree that we need in order to, again, dismantle it. Okay. So this is an example of a brittle tree. This is, again, the willow that is right behind me. The Tilia collection. Tilia is basswood, very popular for carving because it is so very soft. But it's a brittle tree, and we literally spent 2 days cleaning up underneath the Tilia collection, dragging brush out, and we'll be going back and spending many more days repairing the storm damage that's in there. So sometimes the damage that we expect to find is predictable. Certain trees have a history of failing. Um, Oftentimes it's species related, but other times it's due to their growth habit or form, as in the case of this large silver maple pictured here. Many of you folks might recognize this tree, although you may not, because oftentimes many people do not walk around the back of the tree to get the view that you're seeing right now, okay? But this is the very large silver maple that is growing right along Meadow Road, just about 100 yards south of the Honeywell building. What you're seeing here
John, that this
is,
was actually a couple of years ago that this damage happened.
oh, I'm sorry, when did I say it just happened recently?
No, but
Right, thank you, Rachel. You're correct in saying so, that this happened a number of years ago, perhaps 4 or 5. And again, that wound is still there, still present. So, but as I said, many folks don't realize that because they don't walk around the back of the tree. But what you're looking at is a large shared branch union, okay? And what happens there is it's a condition that is known to be a defect in trees. As the branches mature and expand, they push against each other, creating tension. And the bark of each branch is forced to roll inward, forming a condition known as included bark. So the picture on the right, that's Bob Irving, one of our arborists here at the Arboretum. Bob stands about 6'7", I believe. No, that's not true, but um, Bob is tall in stature, and you can see that that is quite a large wound. A few feet above his head, where you see the dark stain, that is the included bark from the leader that was lost and the others that still remain. So as you can see, there was no longer woody tissue holding those limbs together. There are ways to mitigate these conditions. Oftentimes, when we catch these defects in the tree early on in its life, we can reduce one of the codominant stems so that they will no longer be codominant stems, when the larger of the two. We can cable the trees, add added support. Screw rods can be added down below into the branch union, or 2/3 or 3/4 of the height up to the tree. High tensile cable may be added to give the limbs added support. We can also prune the tree to lessen weight and take out some of the sail. Here's another example of a codominant stem. That's AJ, Andrew Tataronis, our newest arborist here at the Arboretum, and he is dismantling a Quercus bicolor over on Peters Hill. This one was damaged just recently by one of the windstorms. And if you look closely, just below his right foot, his back is to us, okay, so that is his right foot on the right. Again, you can see where one of the codominant stems failed and fell to the ground. It's a large wound that unfortunately is on one of the parent stems of the tree and will be there for quite some time, for the rest of the tree's life actually, unless that branch is removed. Unfortunately, it's an opportunity for fungi to enter the tree, therefore weakening some of the internal structure of the tree, the heartwood. I will say that I'm going to date myself, back in 1991, when Hurricane Bob swept through New England, I was a sales consultant for a large tree and landscape company in Greater Boston. And I dare say that 90% of the sales calls that I made after the storm were ones much like you're seeing here in these two pictures again. Codominant stems that failed, internal decay in the tree that caused rot, and limbs failed again, old pruning cuts, flush cuts. Again, these are historically weak branch unions in the tree. What you're seeing here are, again, common signs and symptoms of decay to look for in your tree. The tree on your right, this is a young tree that I'm not sure how it sustained some damage. It looks like there's both old and new there if you look closely, there are injuries on that tree, which unfortunately are going to be with that tree for the rest of its life. Okay. The only way that the tree can protect itself from harm is compartmentalizing the, the damage that has occurred, the decay that has been caused by the damage. And hopefully those walls of compartmentalization will hold up and stop any further spread of decay. The picture of the plant on your right, however, you can see if you look closely, there was an old basal cut in that multi-stem plant. One of the stems was removed, and unfortunately, it seems that the tree was probably under stress over a number of years, and the decay had spread into the stem that failed there on your right. Other causes for decay in tree, wounds, as I said. My suspicion, what happened to this tree here, this is a large, I'm not sure what type of oak, red or black oak perhaps. This is on the road going up to Buzzy Hill. But my suspicion is what happened here was that many years ago, before we knew the proper way to make a pruning cut and to minimize wounding to the parent stem, we used to make flush cuts right up against the parent stem, okay? And unfortunately, what that did was create an unnecessary wound, a large wound against the parent stem. And again, if the tree was under stress, decay forms, breaks through walls of compartmentalization, spreads, and becomes a large pocket of decay, compromising the tree's structural integrity. And what I suspect happened here is, again, we had a column of decay that spread from some old pruning cuts, compromised the structural integrity of this tree, and in the windstorm, snapped it right in half. So signs of decay in your tree, folks, you can look for cavities, old pruning cuts, wounds to the tree, conchs or mushrooms along the stems. Oftentimes you may see mushrooms at the base of the tree and even away from, sometimes from the tree, but close by. And what that may be an indication of is root rot. Here again, this slide is showing you fruiting bodies on the tree, an indication of decay. As you can see, obviously occurred on this Prunus species. Another cause of tree failure can be attributed to root loss, okay? Construction, vehicle, even continuous foot traffic can cause compaction in the soil and the loss of roots. Drought causes desiccation and the loss of fine feeder roots. And on the other end of the spectrum, continuous soil saturation can cause anaerobic conditions, which in turn can cause rot over time. Shallow rooted trees or trees with compact root masses, such as conifers, are often susceptible to being uprooted, such as in the case of severe rainstorms with high winds when the soil becomes saturated with water and the tree's roots lose their holding capacity. I believe that is a hemlock that was going along Hemlock Hill, and that tree had a very shallow root system. If you're familiar with Hemlock Hill, the trees there are growing almost on ledge. There's not a very deep, there's not a whole lot of soil there for the trees to really anchor themselves. I'm sorry, there's a comment here. Somebody missed what I said about compaction, roots, and conifers. Compaction causes root loss, okay? It takes up the airspace in the soil so that the trees are not able to extract water or air from the soil. So this is a tree that was just recently lost here at the Arboretum due to the high winds. This was a pecan in our Carrier collection. I don't know how well you can see that, but it was very interesting to see that a tree this large was uprooted, and the roots that were exposed were not severed, but they were literally non-existent. There's a large root, as you can see, almost pointing out towards the person who took this picture, that just abruptly ended. Not that it was broken when the tree was uprooted, but that it was just the rest of the root was no longer there. And my suspicion is that at one time, I believe there may have been either a path nearby this tree, or there was some type of a drainage system, and the roots may have been severed. The trees really rely on not only their feeder roots to bring them nutrients, water, but many of their larger roots are what we call anchorage roots that support them and hold them into the ground. These two trees were felled because they lost, again, their structural integrity due to decay. They were conifers growing near the open area of Kent Field, so they didn't have a lot of protection from their neighbors. Being conifers, evergreen, and having a large sail, they caught the wind in their stems, not having the structural integrity that they normally would, the support of all of that solid heartwood, which is now turned to decay. The trees failed. So to wrap things up, I like to say is, what do we take away from all of this is that plants need our help. And obviously, as you can see in this slide, this poor plant wasn't getting much help at all, okay? There is a young plant there underneath those tracks. So what do we need to do to help our plants? They need to be cared for properly, preferably early on. They need to be planted properly in the right location where they can acquire enough nutrients, moisture to sustain a healthy life, to keep their vigor up so that they may be able to fend themselves off from decay and other biotic and abiotic disorders. They need to be pruned on occasion to remove potential hazards before they become large ones. Here at the Arboretum, we stop pruning our trees before they even are moved out into the Arboretum, while they're in the nursery. Chris Copeland, our horticulturist there, is walking through the aisles and looking for potentially structural defects and removing them before they become larger structural defects as the trees mature, okay? And of course, they need to be watered on occasion, okay? So that, again, we keep our trees healthy and vigorous so that we combat the abiotic and biotic disorders that may plague them. And finally, know that trees may require periodic inspections and professional care. So thank you for tuning in. Have a good day. And at this point, we'll open things up for questions that will be fielded by Pam, I believe.
We do have a bunch of questions here. So okay. Deb, who you know is at
yes.
the Wakefield estate,
Hi, Deb.
She says that they noticed that trees that have opposite branching sustained a lot more damage from the snow. Did you notice that?
Well, I know our ash collection did sustain quite a bit of damage. The maples this year, they not too bad in these last few storms. I might guess that, when plants have opposite growth, again, oftentimes they have codominant stems, which may make them more likely to be prone to failure.
And again, she's asking, since these wind events seem to be coming more frequently, are you changing your pruning practices, being more proactive?
It was very hard to do so over the first, I want to say, half of my tenure here at the Arboretum, when there were only 2 arborists. It seems like most of the time we were acting on a defensive mode and running around as we have been the last few days, just putting out fires. But fortunately, we've added 2 more arborists to our crew. And yeah, I dare say that we are taking a more proactive approach to pruning the trees. Since the landscape management system has been put into effect, we have created an arborist calendar, and we move through the collection based on the trees' priorities and the intensity level that they create, based on their species and where they're growing. So yes, it's fair to say that.
Have we ever replanted an uprooted tree?
We have. we have. Sometimes it works, and sometimes we're not so lucky. But yeah, I know one tree that we were successful in, and that's the Pinus spongiana that grows along conifer path. As you're driving through the conifer collection, it's on your right where there is that slope that sort of drops down from City Shack area. And that tree was with a mechanical advantage. It was brought back to an upright position and then cabled to, I believe it is a fir that is behind it. And that cable is still there in both of those trees, and the tree still stands. Certain considerations need to be given if that is a thought that someone is considering, how much root loss has been occurred, sustained from the tree. A lot of factors got to be looked at before it's considered. Go ahead.
Right, you weren't going to replant that, was it the pecan that was uprooted, or an oak?
Yeah, interesting question. I don't know if you know the answer to that, Pam, but actually that tree was slated for removal. Its lineage was not that, the providence was not that rich. And we were going to remove that tree to make room for perhaps some wild collected plants.
And if it was a very important tree, I think you alluded to the fact that you might take a cutting from that tree for repropagation. Was any of that done in this recent storm?
We were actually really lucky in these October storms. None of them needed repropping or cuttings taken from them. So I think we had 2 or 3 trees that just snapped right in half. We had probably 3 trees that blew over completely, uprooted, and then another handful of trees that major limbs tore out that resulted in the ultimate decision to remove that tree for safety reasons. So luckily, no high value plants, and it could be high value because it's a rare species. It could be high value because it was collected from the wild, especially if it's collected from the wild in a place that we can't get to very easily to recollect that wild material. And these October storms, most of the damage was actually broken branches, which seems minor to you, but when they're large branches, and just like the sheer number of large branches, just, we've been cleaning up branches for weeks now, and the arborists have been climbing trees to get hangers, broken limbs that are hanging in trees, and cleaning up broken branches.
I have some more for you to answer, Rachel. Are all the red square indicators that you showed on that map of tasks to be done, is that all to be completed by arborists, or was that by horticultural gardeners? Was it a combo?
That's a combination of the whole horticulture team, which is comprised of the 4 arborists. We have 9 horticulturists, actually 8 horticulturists and 1 gardener, and then we have the landscape team, which is made up of gardeners and horticulturists. So there's 3 of them. So that's tasks for all 16 of us. And it runs the gauntlet from, pulling out weed trees that have gotten carried away, pruning something, there might be some dead wood in a plant that needs to be attention. So those are just kind of like alerts to either the arborist or the horticulturist. It could be an area that needs mowing. It's sort of a task list that kind of goes outside the normal yearly maintenance. So like right now we're going through leaves and we're doing leaf cleanup. So we wouldn't put one of those ARB manager requests for cleaning up leaves unless it was particularly bad and needed immediate attention.
Do you know if any of the lilacs were damaged in the storm?
Oh boy, were they ever.
Oh dear, oh no.
So the storms are very interesting. Every storm is different and hits different locations in the Arboretum. It all depends on like wind direction or snow load, snow load followed by high, a lot of rain, or a lot of rain and followed by high winds. It all seems to target different spots in the arboretum based on, you know, the side the hill faces, whether it's a conifer, deciduous tree, you know, weak bark, or softwood. But the last storm, last Friday, the snowstorm, so that snow that happened in October when the leaves were still on the trees allowed a lot of surface area for that snow to stick on and really pull those limbs down. So that Friday snowstorm, I've been referring it to as the storm for the shrubs. The larger shrubs in smaller trees, they really took a hard hit, which includes the Long Meadow Road, you know, the azalea border, and the lilac collection. Lilac collection is those sort of a larger shrub zone, and it really caused a lot of broken branches. I think we only lost 2 lilacs to that storm. One of them completely uprooted, and the other one was uprooted, you know, most of the plant. So it was a multi-stem shrub. So we lost probably a good portion of its major limbs.
What happens with all of the branches and trunks? What goes on with all of that?
So everyone, all hands on deck, drags all these broken limbs to the edges of the road, and we clean up where the breaks are as best as we can. And then we have a wood chipper that goes around, and we kind of rotate this responsibility amongst the whole horticulture team, and we turn it all into wood chips. So all these broken limbs get turned into wood chips. They go to our materials yard, where we will turn this into mulch and then use it to mulch our plants. So it's sort of a nice recycling event that happens. And then mulch will go to nurture the trees and help the trees grow stronger.
If any of that material is damaged, or not damaged, but diseased, is that something you set aside and don't mulch it, or is the composting process hot enough to take care of all of that?
It depends on the disease. If it's like black knot or fire blight, then we'll try to put that material in a separate location, or dispose of that material, put it in an area where it'll get composted longer, and not go directly back onto the trees. But most of the time, our raw wood chips, they get sort of composted, you know, allowed to heat up to a certain temperature that kills most diseases before they get put back onto the landscape.
There's a question, John, about construction and heavy equipment, and how far away should you keep that from a tree if there's construction going on?
The $1 million question. So the rule of thumb is to stay at least beyond the drip edge of the tree. Obviously, some trees have a much larger drip edge than others. Sometimes that's not feasible, okay? But you could have a large tree, a fastigious tree, which is not going to have a very large drip edge at all. And if that were the rule that you were using, you'd become much too close to that tree. So how far away? As far as possible, I would say. Yeah.
Just stay away.
Yeah.
Okay, if you have a branch that's been removed, it's been trimmed off because it seemed to be damaged, and you find that in the center of that branch there's rot and it seems to be going right into the trunk, is there any hope of preventing that from going farther, or is it kind of a game with time?
The best hope that that decay will not spread is that the tree has compartmentalized that decay and walled it off. Okay, that's the tree's first line of defense, is compartmentalizing the decay. So long as the tree has a lot of health and vigor, usually those walls of compartmentalization will hold up and will halt the spread of decay. But once a tree's health starts to decline, it's under stress, as in, you know, what's happened recently with these droughts, attacks by insects, diseases, anything that, you know, again, any biotic or abiotic disorder that causes the tree to come under stress. Just like us, our immune systems break down, the tree's immune system break down, those walls of compartmentalization will fail, and the decay can spread. So it's best to just try to keep your trees as healthy as possible.
Someone has a question about the pruning. You mentioned on that tree that you suspect it didn't get the proper pruning cut in years past. Can you say a little bit more about what a proper side branch pruning cut would be?
Sure, absolutely. If folks want to Google target pruning, you'll get a great explanation of what it is. We use two parts of the tree's anatomy to guide us to make a proper pruning cut, okay? And let me back up a bit by saying that this goes way back to Alex Shigo, who I consider the godfather of arboriculture, okay? He used to work for the Forest Service, and he used to grade lumber. And when, you know, they were cutting the lumber, the logs, I should say, to make, you know, boards out of them, he saw that, you know, some trees, the internal grade of the wood was better than others. And he wondered why that was. And he found that trees that shedded their limbs versus ones that were left on the tree for a number of years or that were pruned from the tree, they seemed to fare better and there was less internal decay. And he came to realize that when we make a pruning cut to a tree, even done properly, it's a wound. But if we do it carefully, we can minimize the wound. So therefore, what we do is we use the tree's anatomy, and that is the Branchbach Ridge, which is a ridge of bark that is formed at the top of a branch union, where a lateral branch meets the parent stem. And then down on the bottom of that branch, that lateral stem, there is usually some slight swelling, and that's known as the collar. So when we remove that lateral stem, we try not to cut into the Branchbach ridge or the collar. So we minimize the wounding to the parent stem, okay? And oftentimes, if we're removing a large branch, we do that in steps so that when we remove that lateral limb, the weight of the limb does not tear down the parent stem, which unfortunately happens many times in storms.
Right. People can go online and you can get nice diagrams of proper pruning cuts. You can see what that should look like. Target pruning. You know, with all this damage that goes on in the Arboretum, is our collection dwindling?
I'll take this one, John.
No, it's never dwindling. We're always planting more trees per year than we are removing, unless that's a plan. I've been here sometimes where we have actually vetted some collections. By that I mean we have swept through some collections and purposely removed many trees, but that most of those trees were oftentimes cultivars, low value trees, if you will, in order to make room for, you know, the wild collected plants, true species. So every year we are always planting, you know, over 100 plants in the spring and fall both. So it seems as though we're normally planting more trees than we are losing them each year, fortunately. Yes.
Just because something was planted in the grounds doesn't mean it's going to stay on the grounds. Every plant is constantly being reevaluated, reassessed. Its value with the potential value of what could be planted in that spot is always being weighed. And so sometimes something will be removed in order to make space. We have limited space here. We don't have land space to grow. And so some things are removed in order to make space for new plants coming in. Or, as this case, Mother Nature will make space for us.
I think one final question, actually, I will give an answer to Bart, who was asking why the black walnut at the foot of Bussey Hill was removed. And that was a tree that had been struck by lightning. Is that true?
Yes, that was a tree that was struck by lightning. Oh gosh, but probably
years ago.
Maybe 20 years ago.
Yes.
The tree seemed to actually fare quite well for many years afterwards. We don't believe it was the lightning that, was the cause of that tree's demise. When we took that tree down and dissected that log, again, there was some very good compartmentalization from the wound that was, incurred at the time of the lightning strike. But that tree died suddenly. We took samples from that tree. We sent it off to UMass. I believe the main pathogen that they found was anthracnose. Not so sure though that was indeed the. I'm not convinced, anyways, that was the pathogen that that finished that tree off. I mean, I don't typically see anthracnose kill a tree that quickly. This happened in the course of just a few months. One spring, that the tree just didn't look right, and as the spring progressed, the leaves never fully formed. They became brown, wilted, and the tree literally collapsed. But other than anthracnose, UMass they couldn't culture anything else in their lab sample. But shortly after we took that tree down, it did regenerate itself. There is it copiced. There's a sucker that is now, gosh, I'm trying to think. It's probably close to what, 10, 12 feet, would you say, Rachel?
Oh yeah, easy.
Yeah, it's doing quite well.
If a tree's crown
worries.
is sheared off from the wind, but the remaining tree looks healthy, is it viable?
Topping is not an arboricultural practice that is usually performed. Okay, aesthetically it looks horrible. Making a large pruning cut on the top of the tree's crown that is exposed to the elements is not something that is typically preferred. However, if you wish to preserve the tree, yeah, it can be done. Okay, it may not be pretty. What I would say to you is, that's a large wound now where whatever the tree was cut back to, okay? And again, we want to be certain that the tree can compartmentalize and stop any spread of decay. If it's a large tree, it's probably an older tree, might not have a lot of vigor. So this is a tree that's going to require, constant monitoring to help keep its health up.
All right. I think we will wrap it up there. So thank you all. Thank you, Rachel. Thank you, John. And as I said in the beginning, we have recorded this. We will edit it and get it posted as soon as we can to the Arnold Arboretum's YouTube channel. Thank you both very much. Great information coming out of that. All right.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Bye, Rachel. Bye, John.